Hi, I'm Ashley Hutchinson of A&S Business Consultants Limited. This morning I took part in a regular business growth meeting with about 20 other businesses, but for the first time we conducted our meeting virtually. I was asked at the start of the meeting whether I could present for 10 or 15 minutes how I'm seeing coronavirus affect both my clients and the businesses that I network with and I'm familiar with. We were able to record the video, and so what you're about to see is my presentation to around about 20 business owners of the impact I'm seeing from coronavirus, and some advice and tips I've given to try to help businesses both survive and come out the other side of the current crisis in a strong position. Hopefully you enjoy it and it's useful. How I've decided to structure this next few minutes, just to give you some idea on what to expect. I'm firstly just going to run through some of the challenges that some of my clients are facing, that I've been helping with and supporting with. You might recognise some of these. One or two of you have already touched on some of these already in your own business. I'm then going to jump to focusing on just 3 or 4 areas in which the government have announced some support. Hopefully I'll add a bit of detail to each of those, some of which you might know already, some of which you might not, but I'm only going to really talk about 3 or 4. And any questions you've got, I'll try and cover at the end. But although I've got a fairly broad knowledge of this, I don't classify myself as an expert. So if I can't answer anything, or I don't think I can answer it accurately, I'll tell you that and signpost you towards someone that I hope can. And then finally, I'll just talk about some recommendations that I'm making at the moment to businesses and business owners. And finally, I think it's very important to just think ahead of post-corona. I think there are going to be some opportunities thrown up from this. There's going to be some changes. It's definitely worth thinking ahead. So first, let's do some common challenges. Everyone that I'm talking to at the moment, everyone I'm working with, is worried about their staff safety, their staff welfare, and also that of their customer base, their supply chain. That it's been, although it's obviously something that they should be worried about, it's refreshing to see how when you get underneath even some of the larger business owners, right down deep, they really do care about the people and the safety and welfare of their people. And I've seen that reflected in every one of my clients, the changes they're making, the efforts they're going to, and the risks they're taking to keep their staff and their clients, their suppliers, and people safe and healthy has been excellent. It's been at the front of everybody's mind. Everybody's worried about cash flow. I haven't come across a business owner yet that isn't worried about the cash flow and the impact it's going to make. And just so I can sort of put that into some context, some of the clients I deal with would already be in a relatively small overdraft, have low costs, not have a great deal of turnover, and would classify as sole traders or self-employed. And at the upper end of the scale, I'm dealing with businesses sort of 5-6 million quid revenue, tens or even hundreds of thousands sat in the bank and cash reserves. But they equally have high costs. They have a high burn rate of money each month. It's at the front of everybody's mind. Everyone's making, what I'm talking about, so I talk about commercial decisions, having to make really tough commercial decisions. I've got 1 or 2 clients right now who are having to decide whether they keep their business operational at a smaller scale or a skeleton staff. I'll come back to that in terms of talking about recommendations and advice in a moment. But they've actually got clients that are expecting a level of service to be retained. And these customers might be large-scale property developers or total FM, total facilities management providers like Interserve, Balfour Beatty, etc. And they're still sending in tender and price requests to the client, and if they win them, they would expect them to be delivered. And in some cases, the request is to deliver the work while the building is closed, so specifically during the lockdown period, which staggers me, but that's a large business thinking forward, and they're still expecting their supply chain to be operational. And in that particular instance, my client is facing a real moral dilemma. Do I try to capitalise, try to take advantage and potentially put people at risk, even though it is classified as key workers, or take a view and actually not submit on the tender? So those sorts of moral dilemmas and commercial decisions are being faced all the time. Innovation. Lots of business owners of all sizes are having to innovate as to how they deliver their service, myself included. So I don't think I've ever sat in as many video calls and conference calls in a week, for example. Businesses are having to, to change to a work from home model. In many cases, businesses that don't advocate working from home or a nomadic culture, as it's known, are now having it forced upon them, and forced upon them in often 24, 48 hours, as Karen pointed out. There's some real personal challenges going on out there. This is cross-sector, regardless of business size, some real emotional hardship, emotional decisions, personal stress. People are afraid, they don't know what the future's like. I've got one, a friend of mine, not yet a client, who I've been trying to work with for the last 3 or 4 months, and my number one piece of advice to her is, don't have your business as your pension, which was been her view, because the risks of your business failing through something outside of your control are significant. But she's still taken the view that her business is a pension. Now suddenly the sands have shifted, and she's deeply concerned that that's been her decision for the last few years. And everyone's struggling for time. The last 3-4 days particularly, everyone's managing all of these decisions and all of these challenges and all of these emotions and all of this flurry of activity forced upon them, while still trying to do, in some cases, their day-to-day job. So everyone's really short of time. So just, if any of you are going through any of those and other challenges, that really is common across all business, regardless of size, regardless of sector. So let's move on to section 2, some of the government support. I've noticed some difference in approach to CBILS. Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan. It's been abbreviated to CBILS. Just to answer a couple of questions. Firstly, CBILS is the announcement for an 80% guaranteed loan facility available through traditional banking sector, so tier 1 lenders like your high street or your business bank. The government will back or guarantee 80% of this to the lender, up to, off the top of my head, up to £5 million per limited business. This was initially announced as a £1.2 million loan facility and was enhanced to £5 million a few days later. First thing about this is, it is borrowing. It does have to be repaid. So Nick's comments about being cautious about this are very valid. This isn't free money. It's not a grant. So if you do borrow against CBILS, there will be an expectation to repay it. You don't get to keep the money, unfortunately. So if you come out of coronavirus with debt that you couldn't sustain before you go into it, potentially that's not a great position to be in. There are, however, some positives to CBILS, and this is really worth highlighting. This might change how some people think about it. The first thing is there's no arrangement fees, so there's no cost up front to the borrowing. The second thing is it's interest-free for the first 12 months. So a simple way of looking at this is, if your business could borrow some money and invest it for 12 months, any benefit you get on the investment, you will keep. And that's backed up because there's no early repayment fees. So if you've got an opportunity to invest some money either in your business or in external ventures, you could potentially, and there's risks attached to this, you could borrow money for 12 months for free, repay it for free, and anything you do with that money in between times to add value to it, you keep the benefit or your business keeps the benefit. So furlough, being used very, very broadly across the country. This applies to PAYE employees. It can apply to directors, but I'll come to that later. And this is effectively an 80%. This is where the government is offering to pay 80% of salaries for staff that are furloughed. To start the process, you need to be furloughed. You need to be told by your employer that you're being furloughed. It's effectively long-term leave, a long-term leave of absence. Your employer will have to keep paying you. The money's not available in a pot for them to dip their hands into and get straight away. They will have to keep paying you for the foreseeable future. And at the moment, the process to get hold of the money has not yet been entirely released, but it's expected to be a portal through the HMRC website where the employer logs on, tells HMRC which members of the staff they have furloughed. Their PAYE is expected to be based on a February PAYE statement. So whatever your PAYE salary was in February, the 80% calculation is expected to be based on that. And it will be capped at £2,500 per month. So that's the maximum amount of money you will receive, regardless of what your salary was on a monthly basis. It'll be 2.5k. The grant is expected, early indications, the grant funds are expected to reach your employer around about end of May. That's a forecast, that's not detailed at the moment, but effectively until that point, your employer will have to continue, or if you are the employer, you'll have to continue paying your employees out of your own cash flow, at least for that period of time. That's it for the moment on furlough, but if you've got any questions, just jot them down and I'll either try to answer them or signpost you somewhere else afterwards. So let's come to the self-employed, much more recent, obviously announced yesterday afternoon, and announced after much sort of press pressure. So I'll come back to that in a moment. Similar to furlough, but there are some structural differences. Self-employed is obviously available to people that are running their own businesses. Tradesman is a great example of this. And the self-employed income is 80% of your profits averaged out over the last 3 years' returns. But, and I've picked up a lot on social media for this, there was a specific question asked of the Chancellor, I think it was by Laura Koonsberg, about self-employed people that have been operating or submitting returns for less than 3 years. And the answer to the question, but not in the main announcement, was they will take a view on anyone that has got returns previously submitted that may only been trading for 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, but they'll only have one set of returns to base their grant offer on. So it looks like you'll be able to apply for that even if you've been trading for less than 3 years. But it is 80% of your profits. So if you're self-employed, you're relatively new to it, and you've been investing your profits back in your business, in order to try to build a client base or acquire materials or equipment, etc. There's no way of accounting for that. It's going to be based on 80% of profits on the returns you've submitted historically, but it does look like the cash isn't going to be available until the middle of June. A couple of differences on this. You are allowed to continue trading. You're not actually furloughing yourself. So that was specifically said in the statement. You can apply for the funds, but continue to trade. And secondly, on this one, you are going to be contacted by HMRC to tell you that you are eligible for this. It doesn't look like you're actually going to have to go to a portal, to a website, and declare yourself as self-employed and ask for the money. Two other, let's also just touch on directors. In the same way, a few days ago, that the self-employed were starting to announce that they were falling through a gap, it looks like directors that are paying themselves a small PAYE salary and then paying themselves through dividends, or paying themselves through directors' fees and dividends, they are now the ones left in a gap. So at the moment, I've not seen anything announced that's going to help that class of employee. I also think that every business requires an active director. So I'm not sure that if you're the only director in your business, you'll be able to furlough yourself, but that's yet to be clarified. However, I do expect, if the Chancellor follows the same trend as happened with self-employed, I'm expecting that to start hitting the press fairly shortly, and then hopefully pressure to be applied for people like that. I fall into this bracket, for example, people like that to start looking out for announcements for support for themselves. Two other really important things. There's been a moratorium on evictions from commercial premises. So if, for example, you're concerned about your cash flow, one thing you can do straight away is stop paying your commercial rent. Talk to your landlord first, obviously, but they can't evict you for not paying your rent. That's in place for at least the next 3 months. And if you're on a more personal basis, you can now take a 3-month mortgage holiday. Your banks should be proactively contacting you, offering you the opportunity to take that. If they don't, you can. Interest on your mortgage will roll over. So you'll still have to pay those 3 months, and you'll still accrue interest for those 3 months, but you can keep the cash in your personal bank. So it might buy you a bit more time. That, I think, is all I've sort of scribbled down quickly to highlight. Hopefully some of that's useful. As I say, any questions at the end? My first recommendation, everybody, is stay safe. And personal outgoings I'm minimising, just so that if this lasts longer than 3 months, I've done all that I can to manage my personal finances accordingly. From a business perspective, the process I've been advising businesses to go through is to try to forecast, if you have a business through coronavirus, forecast what you expect the revenue to be, forecast what activities you're going to be continuing, and then scale your business to only deliver that level of service. So if you've still got a number of staff operating and you find out you've got too many staff in the business versus the scale of the service you think you're going to be providing, take some decisions on those members of staff, those operational costs, and likewise manage your professional outgoings. Commercial property rent, for example, mortgage payments, etc., are all available to be looked at. If you've got any doubt in terms of being able to do cash flow forecasts, Nick touched on this already, seek some professional advice, whether it's from a professional, from a friend, from a colleague, whatever it might well be, but try to make sure you do it properly and do it accurately. I hope you found that useful. That's the end of my presentation this morning. My contact details are on the screen, so if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And if I record any more videos or presentations like that, I'll be sure to share them as well. Thank you very much indeed. Good luck to everybody, stay safe, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.